Hi, everybody, it's Weird Wink Wilkinson laughing and scratching at you. How's everybody doing today? I got a little bit of a stiff neck. Let me just fix this up. Oh, that feels a lot better. Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about. That is where we come in.
No human being would stack books like this.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Oh, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
It's a cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
We have the tools, we have the talent.
It's Miller time.
Luminous being so we, not this fruit bastard.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hey, these aren't my rules. Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know something? Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point. You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Sometimes happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you gonna call?
It's showtime.
What's going on today? Welcome to episode 276 of Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, but my guest tonight is not here. Clayton is usually pretty good at being here. But not tonight. Not tonight. Anybody know where Clayton is? Anybody seen him? I know he's in Australia, whereabouts unknown. I figured, what the heck though, let's do the show anyway. Maybe he'll show up. He's got the link. I tried getting in touch with him for a while now. I haven't heard from him. I hope he's okay. Went to his social media. I don't think, I haven't seen him on in a few days. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, tonight, what's going to happen is that I'm going to pop a link into the chat. See if we can get an open lines show going. And that'll be that. I'll give it about 15 minutes or so. And then we'll do that. And if no one really joins from the chat, we'll have to wrap it up early. If you don't want to join from the chat, you don't want to pop in on the show, that's okay too. If you guys want to chat a bit where you are, and I'll do my best to chat a bit from where I am, then we could do that for about an hour or so. This reminds me of the previous iteration of comic book radio where I think like once a month at least we had a guest that would just ghost me, not say anything, not be around, not let me know. Sometimes I wouldn't hear from them for like 2 more weeks. Are we gonna bring that back? I'd rather we didn't, but maybe it's unavoidable. But alas, Clayton is not here. All right, so let's see who we do have here. We have Crash Landon, giving you guys some Three Dog Night lyrics. Now, if Clayton was here, I would tell you to go to How to Draw Comics Academy. There's the link. There's also a link for King Cryptid number 10 to 13. We're one backer away from 400. You can go either to the Indiegogo, kingcryptid.com. We'll take you right there. Or you can go and back direct on alternacomics.com/kingcryptid. If you have not had a chance to check out King Cryptid yet, and you're a fan of monsters, mystery, paranormal history, adventure, all kinds of great stuff within that comic. We follow the adventure, the journey of King Cryptid, who is New England's supernatural hero, part man, part monster, all cryptid. Is he a king of the cryptids? No. But people think he is. People do. And they describe him as such. He kind of has a silhouette, kingly silhouette. But that, what we'll find out, was given to him mockingly when he was betrayed and cursed over 500 years ago. He's been around for a long time. And he's got a lot of history. But right now, he's finding himself at the center of a fight for humanity and the very planet itself. And beyond that. So if you want to find out, we've got issues 1 to 9 right now, currently in stock and available, ready to ship. 10 to 13 funding on Indiegogo and the Alternate Comics site. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, those 4 new issues, you could back it for $15. Just $15 plus shipping, which isn't too bad. Flat rate shipping. $15 gets you those 4 new issues. We got Ben here. What's up, Ben? Good to see you. Headless Bourgeoisie. How's it going, HB? We got Brian Suddenly Old in the chat. How's it going, Brian? And I've gifted you guys, since it's a new month, you know, every month I get 10 memberships to gift to you guys. You get to use the chat emojis. Maybe check out some of the members only videos. It's just like old live streams and art auctions and things like that for the most part. But 5 of you got one, and then another 5 for a total of 10. So if you got one, enjoy it for the month. And if you would like to be a member of the channel, if you appreciate and support whatever I do here, and you'd like to contribute that 99 cents a month to be a member, interact in a different way, use the emojis, all that stuff, feel free. It's just 99 cents a month. JC says, the thumbnail ad, where is this comic at? Ooh, is Kozor not fulfilled? I would ask Clayton if he was here. And you could ask Clayton too. But he is not. AL, what's up, AL? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And Crash Landon lamenting the missing Clayton Barton. I need Clayton. I'm going to replace this episode's thumbnail later on, if Clayton never shows up, with Clayton on a milk carton. Where is he? Have you seen him? Let's see. JC says, where is the comic for the... You asked that, JC. I don't know. Brian says, send out the messenger kangaroos. Let's see. Headless says, the dulcet tones of Pete Samedi are enjoyable enough. Well, thank you, HB. I appreciate that. Comics for Life. Hey, Pete and chat. What's up, Comics for Life? Man, you ask such good questions all the time. Really would have been a good one tonight. Maybe, might still be, if Clayton shows up. Kevin Thomas, what's up, Kevin? La. I'm tongue-tied on Kevin. I got that Clayton out of my mind. Let's see. Hello to you, Crash Landon. JC says, is it possible to jump on the stream using a phone? No. Sorry. Not tech savvy at all, and my tablet is out of date. There's no such way to do that, and I'm not going to give you my phone number. I like you, but I don't like you that much. Brian, thank you for putting that link up there, alternacomics.com/KingCryptid. That would be the only way to give you a phone-in link. And even then, only I could really hear you unless I put you on speakerphone. And that's not going to happen. So if you can't join, it's okay. You can stay in the chat. Appreciate you in the chat. Let's see. HB, I must have said something funny in the rare moment in time. Luke Smith, what's up, Luke? Hope you're doing good. We got Cole King here. Says, hey, man, great to see you. Gonna miss most of tonight, but I'll catch the replay for sure. Well, that makes both you and Clayton Barton. He will probably miss most of tonight, too. But Cole, I'll miss you, buddy. And I hope you do catch the replay. If, we will have a replay. I don't know how good that replay might be. Maybe it might be great. You never know. Tune in. Chris Maycock, what's up, Chris? Good to see you. Gordon Goodbrother says, Clayton, come out and play. Let's see. He wants to know, where is Clayton Barton? Sounds like a pulp novel. Yeah. Let's see. Headless says, can I join via fax? Soon. Hopefully. In the big printer setup I'm supposed to get. Real expensive, fancy pro printer. You know, print these comics in-house at Alterna now and print them hopefully for some other people too. One of the features it has is a fax. It's got a scanner, a copier, a fax. I don't have a phone line for this fax. But if I did, it has one that I can use. Faxes are still a thing. They are. You know. It's interesting that they are. But they are. And that printer will have one. I don't know if you could join the show via fax, but you could send me a fax if I did get a phone line for the fax. I don't have a landline. Anyone out there not have a landline? I don't have one of those. I have a cell phone. And the service is Tello. And it's been good. I've had it for like 2 months so far. It's really cheap. It's like $8 a month. And I'm liking it. But I don't have a landline. So I'm not going to really use that fax. But it's there if I would like to one day. Chris 6. What's up, Chris 6? Hope you're doing good. Gordon says, did Pete just Pee-wee JC? I like you, JC. Like... Cole King says, sorry, Pete. I didn't know he was MIA. Yeah, he is. And I'm going back and forth with my tabs between the messages I've sent to Clayton today. Very obnoxiously so. I think I've sent him like 6 messages over 12 hours, maybe. Now, I know he's in Australia, so his time right now, I think, is 11 a.m. I might be off by an hour. But we've had Clayton on the show before, and I've been on his channel before. That time has never really been a problem for him. And he was easy enough to book. I had to reschedule his day, but his day got moved from sometime in April to today. So, speaking of people I had to reschedule, Sarah Frazetta was supposed to be on last Thursday. And we have Bill Mouse on instead. Bill was nice enough to come on and fill her spot. But Sarah, we booked her. We rescheduled to have her on May 20th. So she'll be on the show on Tuesday, May 20th. fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But she did give me a heads up about it. You know, days in advance. Said I got a lot going on all of a sudden, you know, and she's a very busy gal. And so we had to reschedule. And I appreciate that when people give a heads up. I worry too. First and foremost, I do worry. Because especially if I don't see that you've been on social media. Like Kelsey Shannon used to worry me to death, even though obviously Kelsey disappears for months at a time. But I would book him on the show, and then he would just not be there. And then I wouldn't be able to get in touch with him for like a month. And he'd be like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Just thought something horrible happened to you for like the past month. But hey, whatever. I write all this stuff down on both the normal wall calendar. It's over in the corner there. And on my phone. It's got like a little alarm that pops up too. So I got them in two places. You know. But I guess maybe some people are like, it's up here. You know, the old steel trap. That old steel trap's getting a little rusty maybe. For some folks. But I hope Clayton's okay. I really do. Let's see. Michael is in the chat. Look at that. An Australian native right there. He knows the time. So it is. It's 11:15 in the morning. Or 11:19 now. You know. Michael's not even supposed to be on my show. And he's on in the chat. Where are you, Clayton? How far is Clayton from you, Michael? Can you like drive over there? Is it like a town away? Probably has no idea where he is, let alone if he did, it's probably hours away. Australia is just like 3 towns, right? It's like a 10 square mile place. Drawn Sword, what's up? Says, I only have a landline. Oh, bless you, sir. Headless says, I haven't had a landline in years. Let's see. Gordon wants to know, can I join via carrier pigeon like Mike Tyson? Depends. Does your carrier pigeon have StreamYard access? Because if it does, then yes, you can. Shrek, what's up, Shrek? Good to see you. Let's see. We also have... Who else is here I'd like to say hello to? Michael says, these comic book types, I tell ya. Amen. Michael says he lives in Hipster Town. That sounds about right. Michael says Pete's creating a blacklist. Never. But it does make it, you know, difficult. It does make it difficult. You know, now everyone gets 1. Sometimes people get 2 if they give me some kind of within 24 hours, you know, because maybe they're violently sick, maybe some family emergency happened, maybe it's, you know, so then you don't even, you get, the slate is wiped clean because that stuff is always more important. But if it's someone who's just like a month later is all, oh yeah, that thing, yeah, sorry about that. And I'm like, all right, write that down there. Okay. When I have to, I've never ghosted someone, but when I've had to cancel on people, I'm overly apologetic because I feel horrible about it. Someone's taking time out of their busy day to accommodate me and be so kind about that. So when I do have to cancel, I'm like, I'm really, really sorry. And then whatever the excuse is, you know, it's usually some kind of an emergency situation, whether it's a family thing or I'm sick or the work, something crazy just happened and I have like this last minute thing I gotta tackle. It's gonna take a few hours and it has to be done because tomorrow we need to get this thing to the printer or whatever it is. You know, it's happened only a handful, maybe less than a handful of times I've had to do that to people. But I always try to let them know as soon as I possibly can. So far, no message yet from Clayton. Still nothing. So I'm going to put in the chat invite for you guys. So if someone would like to fill Clayton's spot tonight, feel free to step on up. And we'll have a bit of an open lines Thursday. Let's see. Headless says, will the printer you're planning to get, will you be able to print magazine size, like the old school Marvel magazines? I would be able to, but I'm not gonna. I would be able to, but I'm not gonna. And the reason why is because we're gonna do two sizes. So I'm gonna have a 6.625 by 10.25, which is generally speaking a standard comic size, and then I'm gonna have a 5 by 7.5, which is like manga-ish. So, and people can use that size as like an ash can. So you can make like these manga-sized issues, or you can make a standard comic issue and saddle stitch. No graphic novel, perfect bound type stuff. It's going to be very bare bones in terms of the format and in terms of paper stocks. I might offer 2 paper stocks. I have to test out a slew of paper stocks. I have like 15 paper stocks that I want to test out. But the equipment needs to be here first. So I need to hit a certain mark on the campaign to start getting all that stuff in. So once I hit, it's going to be a $15,000 goal on the campaign, probably going to launch like next Friday on Fund My Comic. And once I hit like the $5,000 mark, I can at least get the printer and a bunch of paper stocks. And that's about it. I can't get everything else I need. And I certainly can't load up on things like I need to and want to, because I want to get stuff going for a year. So I want to get ink, I want to get paper, I want to get boxes for at least 50 to 100 orders that I would be shipping out. And these boxes would be a box within a box. So this way they arrive safe and sound. A box with a little bit of space so I could put some cushioning around it, stuff in some packing material, and then that would be how it would be shipped off. It'd be kind of like a double wall box, but a little better because you got a cushion, you got a buffer about an inch or so between the side walls of the other box. And I'd be doing print runs of 200 or less. So at the 5,000 mark, because that's what's great about Fund My Comic, is as the contributions come in, you get the funds like a day or two later. So once we hit like the 5,000 mark, I can get paper stocks in and all that kind of stuff, and the printer especially. But I can't get like the paper folder machine. I can't get the stack cutter. And I can't get, there's one other. Well, I have the stapler, which is actually, it's this. I finally got it to show on air. It's a very modest stapler. They do have fancier, bigger ones, but they're still manual. So what's the point? And they cost like 5 times as much. And I've had that one already. So I don't need to do that. I can kind of save on expenses with that. I'm figuring out something right now with the covers, and I'll talk about that if it develops and if it actually pans out. But I'm going to save that for once I'm 100% sure. But I'm really excited about what we can do. I printed out all the test print stuff today for the finalized 5 by 7.5, like the ash can size / manga single issue size. It came out great. It came out great. All I got to do is just fold it and assemble it and all that stuff, and I'll show that tomorrow. But it's crazy impressive. And that's not on like the good printer. That's just on my regular printer. I can't print ledger size, which is 11 by 17, which is what I would need to print to make a full-size comic. I can only do like an ash can right now. So a lot of really promising developments down the pipeline, hopefully. Like I said, in regards to the covers, I'm really hoping this specific thing could work out, because if it does, it's going to be fantastic. But I won't talk about that yet until it's actually finalized and done. But it would only be like 1 or 2 formats in terms of trim size. If I start offering and going crazy, I'm not going to be a full-fledged print house. And I want people to understand that. If I'm going to be a full-fledged print house, Alterna shuts down. And that means I don't publish people's work anymore. I probably don't make any more art. And I don't make any more King Cryptid. Because I'd be taking on that much print work to justify what I have as a setup. And also the time to do all of that and just take on jobs constantly, nonstop, over and over and over, never ending. So I have to be like, okay, this month I could take on like 2 or 3 print jobs. And if those go relatively quickly, maybe I'll open it up again. But I want to have time, though, to focus on what I actually really want to do, which is still be a publisher / creator. You know, so some people have asked about all these different options, you know, specialty covers and hardcover, and no. I bought newsprintcomics.com, so they're just going to be on newsprint. I'm hoping that I can get like 2 grades of newsprint, one that's thinner, one that's a little thicker, and that those will work out well. And then I'm hoping I could offer maybe 2 cover options. One a little thinner, one a little thicker, and that's that. And perfect that. And there's more than enough people that want those things that if someone wants anything else that's whatever, you know, they could either go somewhere else, or we'll see where I am at this point, or at that point I should say, of, well, can I take that on? You know, so I've been doing this, let's say I've been doing this for 3-4 months, and I've perfected the process. I got my assembly line set up, everything runs great. I feel like I can offer, you know, the 8.5 by 11 traditional type size, or an 8 by 10 sized magazine type book or something like that, then maybe I consider that. But I want to make sure that what I'm doing, I'm perfecting it before I move on to something else. And if I can move on to something else, do I have the time to move on to something else? Does it make sense to move on to that something else? Or does it just make sense to stay where I am? And that's that. Because that might be the case too. That might be the case more than anything else. Let's see. Gordon says Clayton got sidetracked. And I don't know what that is. Let's see. Comic Book Radio, that's me putting up that link there for you guys. If you do want to join the show, there you go. There's that link. I put it up there again. Let's see here. Brian says Clayton is browsing Cashies, Australian version of the Goodwill. Is that what it's called there? Cashies? Okay. HB says, I look forward to helping to fund that printer. Thank you, HB. Appreciate that, man. So I'm going to be pre-selling press time, essentially. I'm going to have a couple of different things in terms of the more popular paper sizes of like 24, 32, or maybe 24, 28, 32. I don't want to go too crazy. But those kind of paper sizes in terms of how many pages are in a book. And then the trim size of standard comic size, and then relatively speaking, of course, and then relatively speaking, standard manga size. And have it just a single issues, saddle stitch with staples. That's it. And then I'm going to have, you know, you could purchase a $100 voucher, $200, $300, $400, $500. I'm going to have various amounts all the way up to $1,000 worth of pre-selling. So if you have a bunch of jobs that you want to get done and you want to purchase $500 worth of press time, you get a code at that point in time. You're going to get that emailed to you, And then you can redeem that code through the Alterna site when the whole printing process page there is set up. And then that amount on your voucher that you contributed to the campaign goes right into your printing. So let's say if you purchase $500 as a voucher, so you bought that in advance, you would then put that through and you get the $500 taken off. You might have some left over or whatever it might be. That might be how it works out for you, but you get that put into your book. So you could print with me 5-6 months down the line, a year down the line, because this is how it's going to be. So this isn't going anywhere. This is so you don't have to worry about, oh, well, will Pete still be doing this in a year? No, I will. So, like, I am dead set certain this is how it's going to be. So you can get that, and then you can redeem that at any time you want. You know, don't have to be that much, but you could get $100, $200, whatever it is, and it would get deducted from your print total, however much that is, when you place that order at that time. And there'll be like a whole calculator thing on the site that, you know, you take this, you take that, you select that size, and then that's how much it is for the job. You know, so it'll be nice and simple and easy to do. And then also I'll have art commissions if people want to get like a sketch card from me or something like that. And that's going to honestly probably be limited to like maybe 50 spots. And that's probably going to be the only way people can get an art commission from me for a while if I were to sell out of those 50 spots. We'll see how many sell from that end. If someone requests a larger size, I'll put up a perk for that. You know, so if someone wants a 5x7 or someone wants like an 8x10 or something like that, then I'll put that up. But most people seem to only really get sketch card sizes from me, which I'm more than comfortable doing. And you could get any character you want. It would be on my personal card stock. And then that's about it. Maybe I'll have I'm really thinking about having a t-shirt and a sticker so that you get some kind of fun t-shirt that expresses your support and appreciation for indie comics. Trying to find a way to emphasize newsprint comics without making it like I'm hurting someone's feelings. Because for a second, I really wanted to have one that says the best comics are on newsprint. That's how I feel. And maybe I still put that shirt out. But I could see people getting really sensitive about that and thinking I'm picking on them because their comic isn't on newsprint. That's the world we live in. But, you know, I want something like that where it could be a fun shirt that people would get that you know, isn't just like this self-serving, like, I got my comic printed at newsprintcomics.com. Yeah, that's kind of, who wants to wear that? You know, it's something fun, like, and this is not what it's going to be, but something as simple as, you know, I love indie comics or whatever, you know, something along those lines. So I'm still thinking about it. I got a couple ideas. I'm still thinking about it. But that would be it. It's relatively simplified, you know, so there's something for the creators out there who would want to get a perk and get that press time because they want to get their book printed. And then there'll be people who maybe they don't want to do that. And maybe they want to get a shirt and a sticker to show support and get something. And then there'll be people, maybe they want to get art from me. And that'll be about it. And we'll see where it goes with the campaign. I've had a lot of people say that they do want to back and get printing done. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. If they say that they want to do it and they actually go through with it, then the campaign shouldn't be too bad. We should be able to hit our goal. Absolutely. So we'll see what people think of it when it's up there. I think they're going to be blown away by the proof of concept. I printed a black and white issue. I printed King Cryptid number 2 because it's black and white. And I printed King Cryptid number 1 because it has nice color value. It's more modern in coloring. I didn't want people to be like, oh, well, you know, the newsprint and you can't really do that. You can't really print, like that on the newsprint. Even though how long have we been doing this, right? But I still hear it all the time that you can't do these kinds of things. It's just you have to adjust the ink coverage, which I could easily do on my end. But it helps if the person making the book does that. And I'll have all these kinds of instructions of what you got to look out for, how you got to format, how you got to size it. Here's a template. There'll be all that kind of stuff when we go and put this actually up and running and in use. But I think people are going to be blown away by that ash can size book because it printed nice, really nice. I'm impressed. And I don't get impressed that easily with this stuff. Comics for Life says, if you wanted to, would the new printer be able to print Treasury Edition comics? Yeah, it could. Are you digging the new Savage Sword of Conan magazine? I have not read it. It's quite a thick newsprint. It's probably not newsprint then. If you're considering it a thick, like it could still have a vellum finish, which is not a coated, which is a textured, like a tooth to it. It could still have that and not be newsprint. If it's thicker than 45 pound, which is somewhere along the lines of like 66 GSM, something like that, then it's not newsprint. At that point, you're talking about like a natural paper stock, or you're talking about just an uncoated, textured paper stock. And those come in like a 50, 60, 70 pound variety. I haven't seen one for like 80 pound or higher. And chances are it might be on that because those are generally more available. But I haven't seen the book. If I see the book, I can actually I can let you know for sure. But some people confuse things. Like they'll think when it's a nice textured paper stock, even if it's like a little thinner, but it's still thicker than the standard newsprint that you would see in a newspaper or a grocery store flyer or anything like that, in an old comic book or an alternate comic. It's up to a certain point of thickness where that's not a newsprint paper anymore. It's not a groundwood derived paper anymore. So that could be what it is. Let's see. Bancroft says that cashies is short for cash converters. I've learned something new today. Spicer says, any price range estimations yet for the print time? Any price range estimations yet for the print time? Oh, you mean to purchase? Okay, so for the press time to purchase it. I thought you were saying like how long would like production time be? Because production time will probably be about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on if it's you ordered. Well, if you ordered like 25 copies, it'll probably be less than that. But if you ordered like a 25 to 100, it'd probably be relatively a week, maybe 2 weeks for 100, depending on how many things I have going on. 200 probably be about 3 weeks, maybe 4, again depending on what's going on. If you end up paying like a rush charge kind of a thing, which I kind of want to discourage. I'm mulling that over whether I should do that or not. The only reason I'm thinking I don't want to do that is because what if everyone starts paying for a rush charge? Now who gets prioritized? It's kind of like buying the blue check mark on Twitter. If everyone's got a blue check mark, if everyone's special, then no one is. How do you prioritize that hierarchy then? So if everyone starts purchasing a rush charge, well, who gets to go first? It's easy if you have 10 orders and one of them's a rush charge, or 2. Then it's like, okay, the order in which they come in. Sure. That's how you would prioritize the order in which they come in. But there begins to be this like hecticness behind it because I can only really go so fast too. So yeah, I can rush it. But if everyone takes on the rush charge, then it turns into, well, it's going to be relatively normal print time. So to get back to your question, because I went on a tangent there thinking about print time and production time instead of purchasing press time. I would say that it's roughly, if you were to get like 25 copies, black and white, it's probably going to be about $275 a copy. Something like that. Between $275 to $3. For color, it'd be between $350 to $4. If you were to get 50, the price goes down. If you were to get, I'm thinking most people probably get about 100 to 200 copies. If you were to get 100 copies of black and white, the numbers that I'm seeing right now for everything looks like it's around, I would say maybe $2 to $225 a copy for black and white. If you were to get 100, and for color, it would be around like $290 to $325 if you were to get 100. If you were to get 200, it would be like, I think, $1.85 to like $1.95 for 200 of black and white, like per issue. And then it'd be something like $250 to $275 an issue with 200 for color. So, like $500 on color would get you roughly 200 issues, give or take. And like 400 to 350 to 400 or so would get you around 200 black and white. Like I said, it's far more affordable than any other print-on-demand printer. Now, some of them might be faster than me. That's for sure. And some of them, if not all of them, will definitely have more print options than me. None of them will have newsprint. And almost none of them will be able to get you a book that actually lays flat. So it depends what you want. If that matches up with what you want, then great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It won't be for everyone, I'm sure. And like I say, I'm not going to go and have all these other kinds of options and formats and whatever. I'm going to just go strictly, truth be told, I'm going to honestly be kind of selfish about how I plan it, because I'm going to be mostly just putting out the paper stocks and the sizings that I would be using here at Alterna, because I'd like to do some mini comics, some mini editions, and have those as like Alterna Ween kind of books or something along those lines, or even just to have like these mini, manga seems to be a popular size format now. Maybe the 5.7, the 5 by 7.5 issue size, maybe that speaks to people who are used to reading the manga size. So might do that, might test that out, see what that looks like. So that's basically why the size formatting would be that way, because it makes sense for what I'm doing, and maybe it'll make sense with what you're doing. And if it does, great, let's do business. Let's get a comic printed. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's how it is. Alpha Red says, that sounds awesome. Thank you, man. Michael says, what led you to taking this on? Michael, you gotta watch Tuesday night's episode. It's like an hour and change. I went through the whole thing. If you want to sit through the madness of an hour of me explaining like top to bottom what led me to this, and like the various steps, and the unlocking, like every door, it felt like I was unlocking a new door. It was weird, because it was all these different things of like, well, what about this? Maybe I'll try that. Okay, that worked. Maybe this now. All these little experiments, I detailed and highlighted those. I showed off print samples. I showed off my test prints. I showed off like a real basic saddle stitch ash can book that I put together, running through the print on like draft mode kind of a thing. And just to kind of conserve ink, because the machine I have now is not friendly towards printer ink. What machine is, I'm not going to be using a cartridge-based machine. The one I have from like 10 years ago was cartridge-based. So if you'd like to take a look at that, it's like, I think it's episode 274 is Printing Comics on Comic Book Radio. It's just from like 2 nights ago or something like that. Let's see. Michael says, if it ain't on newsprint, you ain't black. Or if it ain't on newsprint, you ain't CMYK. Brian said, I love the smell of newsprint in the morning. Well, you know, when we launched the Alterna newsprint line, I love the smell of comics on a Wednesday. You know, which was because we were in Diamond, and Wednesday was New Comic Book Day. And obviously, newsprint comics have a distinct smell. And that smell grows over time to a fine bouquet. For most people, that's how they feel. But, yeah, I thought about something like that, but I don't know if I want to reuse the slogan. You know, we had bringing back newsprint, but we already brought back newsprint 8 years ago. So that feels kind of weird to say that. You know, like newsprint comics are back. That feels weird to say that too, because again, we brought them back 8 years ago. So I wanted something that was a little bit more creator, reader centric about independent comics, indie comics, which is INDIE, guys. INDY is like Indiana Jones. INDY is a nickname, is a shortened name. People do the INDY comics. That's not independent comics. INDIE is short for independent. Kind of drives me nuts. Michael says, what's the total ink limit for newsprint? I suggest around 220 for the total ink coverage, you know, across the CMYK. That's a good ballpark. You don't got to get too dark when you're doing certain tones. You really shouldn't. You don't need to. But the totality of it, like if the black was too, and even then you don't need to make black at 220. You could have a black that's like and still have a rich dark black color on the page. You could make like a 20 20 20 and 100 and it'll still look really dark, you know, but you really shouldn't go over 220. A good rule of thumb is even just try to keep it around 200 or less, you know, for the total ink coverage. And again, for those that don't know, that's CMYK. CMYK, you can go from 0 to 100. So if you have all of them set to 100, the total ink coverage is 400, which is not advisable for newsprint. That will either eat a hole through the paper with the ink, or it'll print horribly. It's one or the other. Now, I will keep an eye on all those things, of course, when I get files that come in, and acclimate them towards what they should look like on newsprint. But it's going to be advisable to set up the files if you really are very concerned as to how your colors look. Just keep it in the totality of 200 or less. 220 max. But you shouldn't have a page flooded with a lot of those higher up levels. Usually that's just reserved for like the darkest colors on there. And text should always be, and this, whether it's newsprint or not, it should be 100% black and 0 of everything else when you have black text. Otherwise, you'll have misregistrations. Misregistration for what I'm doing is really not going to happen unless I purposefully do it that way. It's a different setup because plates with web press printing on newsprint, you get a plate of cyan, a plate of magenta, a plate of yellow, and a plate of black. And you can see that if you're familiar with Photoshop, you can see that when you go into the channels, the 4 color channels, you should not ever, if you're going to print, you should not ever go through RGB. You should go through CMYK. So if you go through CMYK and you see those channels and you click on them, And what you see on there is basically what it looks like when that plate with that ink coverage goes down, and it's a very fast process, and it goes on the page, and it hits the same page. All those 4 plates hit the same page with different ink. And one of them's got blue, which is cyan. One of them's got magenta. One of them's got yellow. One of them's got black. And that's what creates the image, is the overlapping of those 4 colors. That's on newsprint printing presses. That's on most printing presses. But that's not what I'm using. I'm not using a plate system. This is digitally printing. So it's different. And the chances of registering are next to none. The reason that you get a misregistration is because paper is flying so fast, you can get like a millimeter or so off. And then all of a sudden it hits, and now you get this little misregistration, which drives me nuts. There's always at least a page or whatever in the comic where I'm like, okay, that's part of the charm, I guess. But sometimes it's a page that you don't mind, and then sometimes it's a page where you're like, why of all pages, with this great splash page, why now did it choose to misregister? And that hurts. And it'll be like the whole print run is pretty much like that. But that won't be happening with what I'm doing. So that's kind of cool. Headless says, I hope you make the rounds promoting the campaign. I think a lot of indie creators will love the idea of a newsprint option. Yeah, I think I will. Micro says, hey, yo, folks, how's it goes? Let's see. Captain Goodnight says, where does that great alternate comics smell come from? Is it the paper itself or from the pressing process, the inks, etc.? Will the new comic smell the same? They probably won't smell the same. So the smell of a newsprint comic generally comes from, like you said, the presses. It comes from the ink that's used, depending on if they're using soy-based ink, depending on if they're using traditional, like it's kind of like oil-based ink. Like if you ever smell the stuff, it's a little toxic, but nothing that'll really hurt you in the long run, I hope. But it comes from all that stuff. It comes from the machinery, it comes from the paper, it comes from basically the natural decomposition that occurs because it's relatively an acidic paper with kind of acidic inks. So the paper also is very absorbent. So the paper absorbs a lot of its surroundings. So depending on where you store the comic, it will take on the smells. There's a word for it. I'm pretty sure it's vociferous compounds, and it takes on the smell of these things and it emits these things over time, and that's what leads to that smell. Whether you like that smell or you don't like that smell, that's what that smell is. Same thing with old book smell. Same thing. It's like a mustiness. If you store a book in the basement, some people like that smell, some people don't. It's that old book library smell. It's very similar to old comic smell or newsprint smell. But the alternate books, it's interesting to say because the paper will smell a certain way, and the ink will smell a certain way. But I'm not sure, maybe it'll be an entirely different smell. It definitely won't smell like a printing press because it's a different operating system with all kinds of different things on there. It's kind of like a cast iron pan. If you've got a cast iron pan and it's seasoned over the years, it adds more flavor to the food. But, maybe you don't want that flavor on your comic. Maybe you do. But either way, time will tell. And these things will age and they will end up smelling a certain way. What that will be remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, I got Clayton in the green room. He decided to show. All right. I hope he's doing okay. All right, before I bring him on, I'm just going to fly through some of these questions real quick. Comics for Life says, how would you printing your own books now change the possibility of collaborating with other creators? I don't know what that means. It wouldn't change that. I don't really collaborate with other creators, though. I hire them maybe to do King Cryptid, but I don't really work with other creators for that kind of thing. Let's see. Michael says 220 is a lot more than I expected. 220 allows for a lot. Yeah, it really does. It really does. Some printers will even recommend 240 depending on the paper stock used. If you get a thicker newsprint, if it's a thinner newsprint, 30 to 35 pound, I recommend not going really over 200. But 220 is like a good rule of thumb as long as it's not an entire page covered in like 220 black. You'll be okay. Citizen Rowan says newsprint is not just for wrapping fish or lining the kitty litter box. Michael says, I've always wanted to do an affordable grayscale version of my book. Newsprint sounds awesome. You'll absolutely be able to do that. 100%. K-Pop says, adore black and white and grayscale books. I love them too. Some people don't, but I love them. Let's see here. Misregistered printing makes Luke Cage's afro look crazy. It probably does. All right, we got Corey Barton here in the chat too. Okay, so it's we're about an hour in, so maybe we can get Clayton on again another day. But I'll be with him for as long as I possibly can. Maybe we could do like a half hour or so with Mr. Clayton, the late Barton.
Can you hear me okay? Peter?
I can hear you. You okay?
Yeah, apologies for the late entrance. Unfortunately, you know, I gotta just be honest with you. I completely forgot and should have my shit together a little bit more, Peter, as it would seem.
I see how it is.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry. I am sorry. But thank you so much for having me late to the dinner.
No
Hopefully,
problem.
The wait is worth it.
This just means you'll have to come on again.
Are you okay? Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. We should, as much as you like. I love catching up with you, Peter. I really do. I know you probably find that hard to believe right now, but we always have a fantastic conversation.
We do. It's always a good one. So yeah, I'll definitely get you back on. I think I have one other spot open this month, and I'll let you know. I got to check what that spot is.
That'd be amazing.
Sarah Frazetta just took one of them, so I got to check and see what else.
Really?
But I got one other one. Yeah. Well, she was supposed to be on granddaughter. She was supposed to be on last week. She's been on the channel before too. It was a great conversation, and she was supposed to be on last week, but she had stuff come up, so we rescheduled, and now she's going to be on the 20th. But I'll get you on again sometime this month.
Yeah, we'll do it.
So how you doing?
Yeah, good. I've been very busy, Peter, as you can imagine, running the How to Draw Comics Academy, teaching our next generation of up-and-coming comic book artists how it's done, but also working on a commission at the moment as well, which always, you know, I'm a slow artist. And so the great thing about that is I really take my time, put the work in, make sure that I end up with a pristine piece of art by the end of it. But at the same time, it delays everything else. And so I try not to take them on too often. But every now and then you get an exception, you know, when it's something special.
Can you say what it is or who you're working for?
Yeah, so it's for a comic book called The Phantom, and it's the Australian publisher here. So I grew up with The Phantom. It's one of the only comic books that I actually collected, and the reason for that is because we really only had The Phantom available to us at our local newsagent, living in a town that wasn't like a suburb that wasn't the city. Well, it was really a town more so than a suburb, so it was a long way away from the city. If you wanted to get American comic books, you'd have to go to one of the main cities of Australia, like Brisbane or Melbourne, where I was. All we had was 2000 AD and The Phantom.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a special connection with The Phantom. Not to mention, The Phantom is the superhero that started it all for the rest. You know, came before Superman, came before Batman, and has influenced many characters from that point onward. even to the point where the Phantom has a whole mythos surrounding him. So there's lots of characters that pulled from that aspect of him. Of course, there's the look of the Phantom, the white eyes, the tights. So you got to pay your respect to a character like that.
Oh yeah,
especially when you get the opportunity.
Great character design. You get like what he's got, the domino mask too.
Yep.
What'd you think of the movie, the Billy Zane movie?
Oh, look, it was a bit of fun. I didn't mind it too much. I thought it was okay. Obviously, it's going to differ a little bit from the comics and how you imagine the Phantom to be. But Billy Zane pulled it off. I mean, what a lovely actor. I wish he was still around a bit more, doing movies. I don't know what he does these days. I guess
he still does
retired.
Stuff. The last thing that I heard is he's doing a Marlon Brando biopic. And
cool.
He looks like a dead ringer.
No way.
He gained some weight and everything. It's not like face prosthetics or anything. Like, it's just the makeup and the styling, and he gained some weight, and it's insane.
Nice one.
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
he's a talented and weird dude. But
is he? How is he
fan
weird?
of Billy Zane. He's just eccentric. He's just he's kind of like he just recently passed, and he was great too. But Val Kilmer.
Oh yeah, Val Kilmer.
He's kind of like that. He's got like that. He had like these leading man looks, but like the heart of an artist, and just a bit eccentric.
That's lovely.
Not afraid to just walk his own path, kind of a thing.
I think you got it in life, Peter. I think you get to a certain point where you realize that's the only way to live. Walk your own path.
Yeah. But yeah, I liked Billy Zane in The Phantom, but I thought that the movie was lacking in other areas,
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of cheesy, and there's going to be holes within it. But did you read The Phantom growing up, Peter?
A little bit,
did your parents?
Yeah, like a little bit in like the comic strips, And I always liked the look of the character. And he was in Johnny Quest, and then what was that other was it Defenders of
Earth?
Yeah, Defenders of Earth. I was like, not Defenders of the Universe. That's Voltron. But yeah, Defenders
That's actually
of
the
Earth.
commission I'm working on. So I'm drawing the Flash and Mandrake the Magician as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
With the Phantom.
That's
pretty
solid.
sick. Yeah. I love that.
Pretty cool.
I miss that era of creativity. I think it was that was probably before the 80s, but the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, I think that's 3 decades, like a real golden era of just creativity that these days we haven't stopped feeding off of.
Yeah, what are they going to do in 20 years? Feed off of the regurgitated remains of what we already have eaten?
I think so. How many remakes are there? It's crazy. And it'd be great remakes would be so amazing if they remade it better, but they always remake it worse.
Yeah,
and
that's
it just
the thing,
destroys us,
Yeah, there's a certain point in time where remakes, it wasn't so bad because there was a reason to kind of remake some of it, because like stylistically things had changed so much, technology had changed so much, how you would compose a scene, the music, the everything, the whole technology, all of it. But now it feels like when they're trying to remake something, it's just, you wonder why. Because you're like, this doesn't need to be remade. And the first time I can remember thinking, why would you want to do that, was RoboCop. Like, RoboCop didn't need to be remade. I could see a sequel, and it would have been kind of cool if it was a sequel that actually was the same amount of time that had passed. So let's say, I don't know what the time frame is, but if like 30 years had passed or whatever it is since the last one or something, and they made it that it was like, okay, this is now 30 years since, and you have a slew of these RoboCops or whatever it might be. You don't even have to follow Murphy. You could just have whatever's going on, and see how that world also advanced. but there's no reason to remake it. What are you remaking RoboCop for? You think you're actually gonna? There's a bit of an arrogance there too, where you have to feel like you're gonna make it better. Because if you don't think you're gonna make it better, why are you making it at all?
Yeah, totally. I mean, once upon a time when they did a remake, they did do it well. Like back in the 80s, you know, you had The Fly, which I love that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a remake.
That was great.
It was really cool.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the 70s was a great remake too.
There you go.
You know, but they updated it and didn't like try to necessarily tear down what was there, but it was like a serious adaptation of the core material, and it retained that vibe. You know, same thing with The Fly, where it kind of did that, but then you get Cronenberg involved, so you're going to have like this body horror element, and you're going to have, you know, these little themes about ethically, is this kind of experimentation okay or whatever. So yeah, you know, these things, like it had something to say using that story. I think that's probably the problem, is that a lot of these remakes don't really have something to say. It's more of like a weird attempt at a cash grab.
It's like they don't get it. They don't get what made it so good. They can't grab the soul of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Michael says a King Cryptid movie, but I'm always wondering about there's so many great independent, not just comics, but just independent everything, and it's so weird. Like, why do we have to feel the need to remake anything, as if there's nothing new that's being made whatsoever of any value? You know, you could just kind of adapt something and run with it. And if they were to approach like you or me or Michael or any independent creator and want to adapt one of our properties, it'd be a hell of a lot easier, more like, I gotta think, to get us to be like, yeah, okay, than it would be to say, you know, let's remake this thing that's beloved and well-known and whatever, instead of adapting this thing that actually is new to audiences.
There's so many ways to screw that up. Like when you've got a beloved character or a beloved story, and it just seems like they've been beating the heck out of all of these established franchises for the last 5 years, probably longer, 8 years, and it's like, just leave it alone, create something new, or stay within the same vein that it was before that made it great. Because when you start shifting major characteristics about characters that everybody knows and loves, and you shift it in a way that's never been seen before, that they can't relate with, then they're going to be like, that's not my character. That's not the Superman I grew up with. That's not the Batman that I know. And that's when you get upcry. That's when people end up leaving comics. They leave franchises altogether, because they're like, well, you know, I stopped at Terminator 2, and that's all that I consider to be Terminator. The rest can, you know, I'm not going to bother with it anymore. That's what happens. You know, you have your version, and you stick with that, and you shut the rest out, and you don't invest in it anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that used to be really prevalent within Hollywood with remaking and re-releasing, because they didn't have the stuff you could watch at home. There was no VHS, there was no DVD, there wasn't anything like that. It was just, you had to see the movie in the theater. Even Disney right now, I'm really, I don't know what the hell's going on. Does Disney even make animated movies anymore? You know, like they just seem like they want to live action adapt the classic animated stuff. And I think it'd be pretty cool to just do what they used to do, which was every generation or so they would re-release the film into theater, and that's how new audiences would get a chance to see that in the theater again. You know, to go into the Disney vault sort of thing afterwards. So it's that I think we think that the younger generations are so averse to what came before, to the point that we think that they've already downloaded these things like they're Neo out of the Matrix, as opposed to like if they see Snow White as an animated movie for the very first time, let's say they're 4 or 5 years old or whatever, they say for the very first time, they don't know that movie's been around for almost 100 years. That's new to them.
Exactly.
And we, I think, because we've been around it for so long at this point already and have kind of taken it for granted, I don't think we can grasp that it's the magic of what that looks like to a kid seeing that kind of thing for the first time.
No, exactly. And they don't know any better. Like you said, they don't know that that's super old. But then again, I remember when I was younger, me and my friends, like, we'd always make fun of our parents' taste in music, like ABBA. They all loved ABBA, right? And taste in movies and that kind of thing. But you grow up and you realize that was a legendary era and that there hasn't really been anything better than that, although that could be the process of us becoming old people.
I think
like
we
maybe
all,
the
we
kids
all
of
come
today.
back to it.
Yeah.
I think that's just how it is.
Totally.
Because I listen to a hell of a lot more stuff now that I definitely didn't listen to when I was younger, that was like before
Same.
my time. Like, I'm listening to Dean Martin a lot, the Sinatra a lot, and
Me
a
too.
lot of
I
stuff
love
from
Frank
the 50s,
Sinatra.
and a lot, right? But when I was a teenager, I was listening to metal and hard rock and grunge and all that kind of stuff, and even though that was like slightly before my time, like that stuff was in its heyday when I was maybe 5 or 6 years younger than when I was listening to it in high school. I definitely wasn't listening to that stuff. I knew of those guys. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't listening to it. But now it's like I put some of that stuff on. Some of it I still dig and I get into, but most of it that I really just nonstop listened to it when I was younger, I'm like, I can't do it. Give me some stuff that just is nice and easy to listen to. And I think it's the same way with a lot of stuff like that, whether it's comics or movies or whatever. And I think we kind of come back around, and maybe one day, because eventually there's only so much you can consume that's being currently made right now, or around the time of contemporarily speaking. And then eventually you start digging into the older stuff because now that's new to you. So, hopefully the same thing occurs with generation after generation, and then they start digging into stuff because they're kind of, everything's all the same. And let me see what's out there that was before my time. And then they dig into the older comics, the older movies, the older music. And the cycle begins with them. And then all of a sudden they start having the conversation we're having about that current generation. And like, I don't get any of this music and the movies and the whatever. It's kind of the human condition, I suppose.
It is, absolutely. And I think Disney and probably Hollywood, the media in general, comic book industry, I think they've forgotten the potent power of nostalgia. Like, a lot of their market would be people in their 30s to say 50s, 60s even. And it's the early memories that we have of those heroes we love, of those movies that we love, that we think back on and we dwell and we feel so connected to. And why they're not monetizing that, why they're not really trying to push on that button is beyond me, because I think that if they were able to somehow just tap into that, for example, what you were talking about with the Snow White movie, releasing that in the cinema, that's going to probably make, if they really promoted that and they really marketed that, that's going to make more money than whatever this one just did. There's a latest rendition.
They don't have to do pretty much anything to it. They just have to send it out to the theater. And especially now, they don't send out the prints anymore. They don't send out like actual physical film.
Yeah.
So that could just be a matter of having the theater download it off of a database.
Yeah. How many parents are going to take their kids to see that? Probably tons.
And then that bridges a gap, generation gap, and you can bond with your parents, and your kids can bond with you and have this shared experience. And now you could still do that obviously at home and have that viewing experience. But It's different. It reminds me of what happened in comics. When comics went into these crazy directions, and a character, I remember even in the 90s thinking like, wow, Spider-Man's got 5 or 6 titles or something, right? And that was kind of crazy to keep up with. But now I don't know where you would begin, and you don't have like this shared experience. So if you were to say, I'm reading Spider-Man 30 years ago or something, chances are you guys are both reading the same Spider-Man issue. So you have this kind of bottleneck of a shared community experience. You could talk about what happened in the issue, you'd be on the same page. But now there's so many. You're reading Spider-Man, that could be Lord knows how many. So there isn't really, unless you find specifically that thing, and because of that, the sales aren't there. They're not as concentrated per issue, and so that's going to throw things off. That's going to make the cover prices higher too, because if you can have a concentrated readership, like let's say you get 500,000 to 1 million people concentrated on reading one title. If there was just one Spider-Man book, right? You have all the Spider-Man readers going to just that one, even if you put that out 4 times a month. So you have all these people reading that. You have this shared experience. And that's what we get out of movies and TV shows, because it isn't like this plethora, although now it's turning into that too. But it isn't like this plethora of, movie franchise A, B, C, D, they branched out. And that was part of the fun of, like, if I say, did you ever see, Ghostbusters? You might ask, well, which one? And I say, okay, the first one. You go, okay, we all have that thing right now. I say in the chat, have you guys seen Ghostbusters? The first one? Everyone's thinking about the same movie. But there's going to become a time where, you say a franchise, something, and you say the first one, and you're like, well, the first one of what? The first one of this version, the first one of that version, the first, and you lose this shared experience.
Absolutely. Have you seen Superman? Which one?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think what exacerbates that particular issue even more is that we're in this information-rich age. Like right now, for example, I've got probably 12 YouTube video tabs open in my browser, right? And guess what? It's not all lame entertainment stuff. It's not like Mr. Beast and PewDiePie. It's not like watching game replays. It's actually educational stuff that I want to know about, like business stuff, podcasts, that kind of thing. And it's all really intriguing to me. I'm like, man, this is so much value. But each one of these videos might go for, let's say, half an hour to 3 hours. And there's just no way you can consume all of it and pay attention and get the most out of it, right? And that's just in the internet browser, let alone all the TV shows and movies we got to pick from on Netflix. Like, where do you begin there? All the comic books on the shelf at the comic book store. There's likely so much out there that is amazing that you just would love to consume and experience. But you've got to be picky. You've got to be selective, because you can't do it all. And I think that's one of the biggest, actually, challenges that we have these days, is like an abundance of stuff.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, there wasn't that much to pick from. Remember before TV streaming came along and like movie streaming? It was just like a few channels, maybe 7 channels, and everything was programmed. You would have to figure out what you wanted to watch on one of those 7 channels, what movie might have been showing at the time, and that's what you would watch that night. Okay, there was no, like, the TV guide was there. It was already, the programming was established, and you didn't have to pick. And there was only a few things that you could select from anyway.
Yeah.
And things have changed dramatically since then. Even in education. I mean, look at the abundance of education that we've got now. What do you want to learn? Do you want to be this? Do you want to be that?
Yeah.
We're spoiled for choice.
A big problem of what I think it is, because the variety of it is great, but it seems like the distribution of that variety has not caught up. So in the same kind of facet of the way that, like, there's so many comics now, There's more comics now being made than ever before, and the distribution is the worst, the absolute worst. It's horrible compared to any other point in time with comics, and it gets worse and worse the more comics we get. If anything, you'd think it'd get better and better because there's so much more variety. And it's the same thing with TV. Every now and then, we don't have cable. We haven't had cable in a long time, and I don't have any streaming provider stuff. I use free stuff like Tubi and Pluto and
awesome.
Things like that. And every now and then, like we'll get a free trial for Prime or something, and then we'll use that, and that'll be that. But my in-laws have cable, and all they watch is what they could get with an antenna, because they don't like watching anything that's on cable. And I'm like, why don't you not have cable anymore? You can just put an antenna up. Because I have an antenna for just in case. We don't really get much, but just in case to have it there, why not?
Yeah, for sure.
And they're so accustomed to paying the cable bill. But their cable bill is monstrous compared to what they actually watch, which they would just get for free. And they are in a spot where they could get a lot on an antenna. I'm in a spot where the whole state of New Hampshire, we don't have a single TV station. We're getting TV access from Maine and a little bit of Massachusetts, but New Hampshire doesn't have a TV station. So the antenna only picks those things up, and depending on the weather situation, we don't get anything coming in really. But they are in a great spot where they're very close to a major station network kind of scenario in Massachusetts. But that's what's funny is that we look at the cable, they'll flip through the stations, and you see it's the same stuff, and a lot of it is even free on these streaming services. So it's like the distribution of them has gotten so much worse. We have so much variety. It's so strange to see. And and I think like that's the big thing that probably is luring people to actually, it's what attracts me to YouTube. Because if I'm interested in something specific and I want to look up whether it's product reviews or a topic or documentaries or more on a subject, or hear people comment on a subject and talk about it, then I go to that. All YouTube has to do is declare one day that it really wants to start squashing the networks, and all that needs to happen is like studios, but better yet, independent celebrity actors, musicians set up and start doing live streams, live shows, live interactive everything, debut films onto YouTube in a big way. And I know they kind of have that stuff with like YouTube Red and whatnot, or whatever. But it could be so much bigger than it is.
You'd think they could buy out Netflix at this point or something, something big. Netflix is pretty enormous now, but YouTube is Google. So but if I was betting on who had more money there, I'd say it was probably Google. But that's besides the point. What I was thinking about, Peter, is how in about 10 or 15 years, I'm wondering what's going to happen with the Phantom and Superman, maybe Batman in a little bit longer period, where all of those characters end up becoming royalty free. Because I know Superman and the Phantom, at least, were created 1930s, and we're coming up to the 2030s real soon.
I don't think we're ever going to see those characters in the public domain in a way that's usable for people. I really don't, because the trademark is what really is the value there, and you're not going to be able to title that Batman. So even if you've got Batman, use the trademark. Because you can't use the trademark, you can't use the logo, you can't use a lot of the trademark everything. That is part. So a lot of these various things that even if there's a version of the character that you can use, because they keep on publishing these things, you can't use like the Batman that really would be popular probably around the 70s that most people at least would know. You'd probably be using like Golden Age Batman, and even then there's been stories that are in modern times that have been published, so they can kind of claim that, oh, well, that's too close to this thing that we did. That is still under copyright. So you got to really have this derivative. What I think would be great to see, but I still like to see original stuff instead. But someone could be heavily inspired by these characters in those forms or in public domain, and then make their own version, make an adaptation, and not feel as shy about it. But I'd still like to see people just go for broke and make something original. Even if legally you can use that, even if something purely is in public domain. It's there's something about that with public domain, because it's a two-way street. Like, you don't own it either, so you can only really build up that property so much, and you get to a point where you do so much building and it really isn't anything like that other thing now anymore, because everything is kind of sort of similar in a way.
Still gotta market it.
Exactly. I really I want to ask you something, because we've had this talk before.
Go ahead.
I think the last two conversations we had a big talk about this. Are your feelings still the same towards AI regarding art?
I was just thinking about AI. That's an interesting question. I think about AI a lot, Peter. It dwells on me, or I dwell on it.
Because just where you're at this point an art educator. You're running an independent How to Draw Comics Academy. You're getting some outstanding results on there from what I've seen.
And it's amazing.
You do a great job at kind of carrying the torch and getting others to pick up the pen and get inspired and create. And then there's AI standing in the corner and saying, "Come over here."
AI is an interesting thing. I do think for businesses especially, they're feeling the call of that particular devil, where they look at AI as a way of accomplishing some pretty impressive stuff for very little money, for very little budget. And that's everything from the creative media aspect to the copywriting of their marketing to, heck, at this point in time, you could have it so that you don't even need to be there for the YouTube videos that you create anymore, Peter, because they've now got AI that has an app, connects to your camera, you can sit in the front of it, do a bunch of gestures, talk a little bit, just a short script, and it'll pick up, it'll record all of that and pick up what you look like with certain expressions, and then you can generate a script with AI, feed it into this application, and your head will be there. It won't be you, but your head will be there doing the presentation in a fairly convincing way. And if it's not entirely convincing yet, it will be pretty darn soon. People used to talk about how, well, AI, it can't do eyes. It can do eyes now very well. Can't do hands, can do hands now very well, right? The only probably flaw that it has is seems to be a visual commonality there that people can pick up on, where they recognize it as AI, at least as far as the art is concerned. People seem to be really able to tell when it's art generated by AI. However, when it comes to realistic photo generated stuff with AI, that to me is becoming very uncanny, where I can't sometimes tell the difference. I think I either think that real stuff is AI, or that the AI is real stuff. So it's really.
There's been commercials and movie trailers that I've seen, and I'm like, is that AI? Only because it looks horrible still. It looks very wonky.
Anything crazy, anything that looks unrealistic to me, or is a crazy claim that someone posts up, like I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. The other day, I saw on Facebook an image of Trump cuddling a woman that was under the age of 18, and this particular post was talking, trying to smear Trump. You can imagine the claims that they were trying to make. And this image, now, I've got a very trained eye because I'm an artist, so I can tell it's AI, but at first glance, it looks real. Like it was very convincing, and so most people will believe that that is real, unless you look for the nuances or are able to see the nuances. And I'm alert to that
point.
stuff.
I've seen stuff that's like supposed to be an image of a crowd that has signs or whatever, like a protest or whatever it is. And then you zoom in, and the signs don't make any sense. The faces don't make sense. Like the positions of people, like a sign will be through someone's head, but from afar, everything looks like it's a real picture. But when you zoom in, it looks like a nightmarish freak show. You know, and people will defend it and be like, well, you know, it gets weird because it's a JPEG, and that's not. That doesn't happen just because it's a JPEG. You know, and that's an AI generated image.
I think that rocket that was just launched by Jeff Bezos with Katy Perry on it and whatnot, I'm pretty sure that's AI. That what you're seeing with their faces on the ship, that looks AI
creepy
to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It looks uncanny in a way that disturbs me. You know, and it's something. There's something weird about it, and I don't know if it's AI or not.
Totally.
I'm more inclined to think that a lot of this kind of stuff is, but I've seen commercials where it clearly looks like someone's face has been mapped to someone else's body.
Yeah.
And they're moving in very inhuman ways. You know, there's something about the face, like it looks like they're wearing a mask of their own face, like the way it maps on. It's very strange.
And when you see the software, that is how it looks. When you see the deep fake software, that's the effect you get.
And at least like that's kind of like the little tells, like you can kind of catch it now. It is gonna, like you said, get to a point where it's gonna be really difficult, if not impossible. But I really find that it's not artificial intelligence. They should really call it like artificial emulation or something like that, because it's not intelligent. It's to imply like intelligence would be to imply sentience, I think. You know, like if you had computers just deciding to up and draw, or a computer that just decided, I want to make a movie. Like they have motivation, they have sentience, they have thoughts, and then they act upon those thoughts. Then I would say that, yeah, that's intelligent. It's not organically intelligent, it's artificially intelligent. You know, and I think we're kind of, and it feels like that's kind of a part of it too, is to treat it as if this is some kind of intelligence, when all it really is it's kind of like the precursor to quantum computing. And that's a little bit strange on that level, because we still, for now, are the people running it. You know, and that's what makes it kind of worse than like I would honestly, how sad is that? I think I would honestly more trust a sentient machine having motivated thoughts of wanting to create art or music or whatever. Just, you know, the way you or I all of a sudden one day, you know, I want to create this story, or I would like to.
I mean, think about
topic, you know,
it doesn't get paid. The AI doesn't get paid when you tell it to generate a new script for a comic book. It doesn't get paid to do that. So it is really, in a sense, just creating it because you told it to. And I wonder what the threshold for intelligence is sometimes, because when I look at AI, you've got these reasoning models now, and you watch it kind of figure out what answer it's going to give. I can tell you, its reasoning is a lot more complex than my reasoning when I'm trying to come up with an answer. You know, you could call it thought processes, but it's really just, I guess,
because it considers a lot of different things from all these kind of perspectives and angles, and and that's what also kind of makes it frightening, because it's like who's providing those perspectives, you know.
Now it can only do that if you press the button, right? But what if intelligence is what if what classes as intelligent is simply going to be at some point you won't need to click the button, that it will just do that stuff on its own.
Yeah.
Will that be the threshold?
I don't know, man. Especially they got those robots now that they're working on. I know. What if they start getting like the tactile ability to draw? Because everyone's like, oh well, the AI is, it's on an image on a screen. It can't draw on a piece of paper. Well, now what if this robot is created?
Dude, they can.
And they probably have it already.
Out, right?
Yeah.
There was this. So now there is I don't know what company does it, but I saw it. There's a tattoo machine, right? That you can hook AI into. You can put your arm underneath this freaking automatic needle thing.
An AI tattoo artist, huh?
And it'll basically print the tattoo onto your arm with a higher level of, like, if you think of every little pinprick that makes up a tattoo, it does a higher density of that. And on top of it, you can give it a super complex image, like freaking like HR Geiger level, and it'll print it out perfectly in your arm.
Wow.
And they've got that now. And I saw one where it was like it was spitting paint onto a canvas, and again, AI operated. So that's the thing, you have got now physical media that can be created by AI. You asked me what my take is on all of it though, and I gotta say, man, I don't know. I used to think that it wasn't such a big deal, and one side of me does, because at the end of the day, it's always been the artist that is what causes the art to sell. So if your name is Jim Lee, then no matter how good I am as an artist, you're probably going to check out Jim Lee's work first, and he's going to be able to sell it for a higher amount of money. Whereas AI, there's always been images out there on the internet. There's always been competition. So AI is really just kind of broadening that field. The thing is, though, at the same time, I wonder, for the greater spectrum of humanity, what AI is going to mean, especially if you mix it with quantum computing. Then AI is really going to take off, which they've got a quantum core out there. I think Intel just released one.
Then we're only days away, or maybe minutes away, from a robot revolution.
Oh, heck yeah. They're worried about the viruses that quantum computing could cause, because they would be unstoppable. So if you add AI into the mix, wow. I mean, that's just going to be something way above the human species pay grade.
Yeah. We're gonna have to start being really nice to these computers.
Yeah, I do wonder what it all means. But then, did you know? I don't know if you heard about this, Peter, but they're talking about the next big pandemic. It's going to be a cyber pandemic. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
So the same organization who predicted that there was going to be a viral pandemic back in, I don't know when it was, like 2019 or something, and they started doing drills for it. It was like a government organization. And then COVID happened. So everybody was like, wow, they predicted that. Now that same organization, that same body is predicting that there's going to be a cyber pandemic, and that in order to basically counter that, they would have to shut down the electricity grid, right, to stop it. And
how so are they saying a cyber pandemic?
So they're saying that, for example, especially if AI, because you have got AI viruses now. If an AI virus got into, let's say, a company like Google, and it was able to spread into your Android phone across the internet,
shut down services, shut down, you completely obliterate that stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And And the only way to stop that would be to shut down everything. And you know what's crazy?
Oh man, that's positioning for a false flag situation. Really bad.
Oh, what's that mean?
Meaning that, okay, so they set it up that, well, and people attribute this same kind of false flag scenario to like an alien invasion. That's not really an alien invasion. It's kind of like we say it is, but it really isn't. And that's why we institute like martial law and all these various kind of emergency procedures that strip you of your rights, take them away, and then you never get them back. So the same thing could be done in that kind of scenario if it's a cyber pandemic, where you're saying, oh, this is the reason that we need to shut all these things down that lead into chaos and people ultimately dying in a massive amount.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't have access to everything that we become dependent upon. Even when I was, I don't know, what is this? Maybe it's before I was really doing Alterna full time. I'd probably say it was maybe like the first or second year of it. And I was working at a medical place, kind of just like a small practice, and they were converting all of their records to digital. So I was scanning them through all the paper files, scanning them through, and then they would be categorized digitally. And then I found out they were throwing all the paper files away. I said, well, what if the server goes down or you have a blackout or data's corrupted? You're going to lose all these patient files. Because I thought they were making backups digitally, but they weren't. They were completely getting rid of all of their paper files because they just take up too much space and putting it all here on the computer. And
how delicate is that?
I was like, what if something happens? Something easily could happen. And it makes me think, you know, how many places have done that kind of a thing and have completely no access to hard copies.
Well, yeah, tons of places. And check this out, right? So I said they're already doing drills on this, apparently, because they expect it's going to happen. And everyone thinks, well, they got COVID right, so maybe they will get this right. And guess what? They just had this massive blackout in Spain. Not sure if that's what Rachel's referring to there, but they just had a massive outage in Spain, in a whole area. And the funny thing about that is all the transport closed down, everything closed down, except for some things. So, as an example, there was apparently some robbers that were circling a bank because they thought, well, all the power's out now, so we'll go and try to rob this bank. And a whole bunch of cops ended up showing up and basically arresting them because the security cameras were still working, right? So, and I thought, well, this is very interesting that this has happened. I think this is a test, actually. I think they're actually trying to see what would happen if the grid went down.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That's my
I don't
take.
remember the last time talking to you being as conspiratorial as this, Clayton. Has something occurred?
Look, man, I am actually a little bit of a big conspiracy theory. But yeah, I think there's probably something to that, and it could happen. If not a cyber pandemic caused by a virus, what a lot of people forget about is, or don't even know about, is there was a solar flare that hit the Earth back in, I think it was the 80s, and it did knock out the power grid for a while. So, I mean, can you imagine if that happened now, when we're so dependent, and if it was a bigger one?
Yeah.
Imagine a massive electromagnetic wave just wiping everything out. So, yeah, I don't know. That stuff, the fact we are so dependent on digital and not hard copy stuff, in some ways makes me feel it's even more important for us artists to draw, to learn the craft, to make sure that we have that skill no matter what happens, because we're craftsmen, we're craftspeople. We need to remember how to do that stuff in a hard copy kind of way, traditionally, because if that stuff were to happen, and you know, I'm not just talking about art, man. If you're lucky enough to live on a farm or something, learn from your parents how to freaking,
Oh,
make your
yeah.
own food,
And at the
butcher
same
your own
time,
stuff.
that is what's kind of great, because
Yeah.
there is an uprising of people learning these things.
Totally.
Because they are having these thoughts of, not only do they feel like they're disconnected a bit because we have gone so digital in so many ways, but they want to reconnect to using their hands and growing their own food, or knowing how these things are made, and actually doing that. And that's what's kind of interesting, is because even though we do have these kind of nightmarish scenarios where we're just a society enslaved by our devices, you do get a vast amount of people that are now more than ever before, because we're so plugged in.
Oh
that
yeah,
they want to.
I think we're all realizing it,
and
we're all realizing we're junkies basically, and that's a major problem.
And I think that's just great for our souls too, to be able to reconnect like that, to be able to, like, even honestly, I'm very excited about the ability to start printing my own comics, to start doing that.
I love
in a
that.
feasible and possible way, because I feel like even just doing the test prints I've been doing and making the test books I've been making, it feels weird. Like I'm putting my energy into the work. These things are not
Beautiful
just
thing.
these big monstrous machines that are churning them out as fast as they can. This is like every one of these books I put together. There's a little bit of like my life energy in these things. And I know it might sound like frou-frou to some people, but it's like the difference between, you get like a meal that like a chef made, or you get a meal that's been, packed into the frozen food section, and it's just squirted out by machines, and then you just kind of consume it and you're done. There's a difference in how I really believe it, in how your spirit, your soul, that energy kind of gets into you, permeates you. And I think it's the same thing that comes with the work that people do. Like whenever you do a good job, whenever you create something, whenever you accomplish something, like there's that feeling, that satisfaction. And there's not even just that, but there's an appreciation by the person that takes that on.
It's a message.
Yeah. Like when my Nana would knit a sweater or something. You know what I mean? It's that kind of like, she made this. She put her time and her soul and her life into this thing. It's like there's a special feeling that's there. Whether I'm imagining it or not, there's just something about it.
Yeah. I think we're put here in a big way to create, to express ourselves, because when you've got people who don't have that creative outlet, or that creative outlet is taken away. Like, let's say that you are an artist right now. You're like, all right, well, AI is going to kick my ass, so I may as well not draw, right? Let's say you stop drawing. What happens? You feel like there's a big hole. There's something missing. Now you could join the pack and you could start generating AI stuff, and that's okay. Like it creates a cool thing, but you're still not expressing yourself. You're still not creating, right? That outlet, it's something different. It's more like being at a slot machine. It's not creating. And so what I've noticed with people who don't have that creative outlet, or if they lose it, they feel depressed. They feel like there's a hole in their lives that isn't being fulfilled. And when we think about what will remain, like once everything turns to dust, like let's say there is some kind of a apocalyptic event, right? And I'm not trying to get too crazy here. Don't worry, there's a point to what I'm talking about, Peter. But let's say that worst comes to worst, doom scenario. What's going to be left? There's not going to be any power, probably, right? So nothing digital will survive. In fact, all the movies on the streaming services, they're not going to be there. Even let's say you got like CDs and VHS tapes. Even that stuff won't. You won't have any electricity to play that. So what will be there? Things you can hold. So pieces of art, paintings, books, comic books. And I started thinking about this I think it was last night I was thinking about it. Like, what should I be investing my time in that's going to stand the test of time? Like if the human race becomes extinct and aliens decide to land and start exploring our ancient civilization, what are they going to find and discover?
They're probably
right?
here
Well,
already.
yeah, maybe. But what will be left? It's not going to be anything digital. It's going to be the sculptures we made. It's basically what we dig up from ancient civilizations, right?
Yeah, it's largely it's stone that survives.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be carving our comic books out of stone.
In millions
So the
of years,
Egyptians
will be oil for someone else. So
yeah, maybe.
you know,
Maybe.
but
I don't know, man.
That's the thing, though, is that you do bring up a great point about the need for a creative outlet, for human expression, for all of that kind of stuff. It really,
you need it.
I mean, that's what I've always gravitated towards, creating stuff and being inspired by people who create things. And I'm sure that many others are very much the same. But
for sure,
there really is like this weird disconnect between, you know, the person who's like, okay, well, I did a lot of work with the AI and prompting it and whatever else, and then it creates the thing, and you refine it and you do whatever you do with it. There's a difference there. There just is. And I'm not trying to say that you're a good person or a bad person or you're whatever, because I think that there's bigger fish to fry with the AI conversation than the artist part of it. I think, you know, there's people that love it, fine, you love it, whatever. You want to buy it, good for you, buy it up. But there's a lot of people who, and there's going to be, I think, always a lot of people who love and appreciate the stuff made by a human being, a person.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think we can honestly do it better, and we can do it faster. It takes more time to get there, but it's like three little pigs. I think there's a lot of this AI stuff these are the houses built with twigs and leaves and stuff that just doesn't last when that big bad wolf comes around. And sure, we're not gonna have a lot of fun, and it's gonna be a lot of work, and you're building your house of brick and all that stuff, but that's gonna last. And there's nothing quite like that, and that's
I
the
agree
point
with you,
of
man. We're logic, and I'm a logical guy. Like, I'm very objective. I try to look at things from all perspectives, and I try not to be biased, especially with the AI thing, because I want to see it for what it is. If it's going to kick my ass, I'd rather see it coming. But I do definitely feel that there is just some kind of weird, unseen difference there. Like an energy does come through human created art. And I hate to sound like some kind of freaking spiritual dude that's away with the fairies right now, but I don't know, more and more I have been contemplating this stuff. Maybe it's just because I'm getting closer to that midlife crisis stage. I don't know, but I feel like there's something intrinsic to what humans express that has substance, that has an energy to it. And it's that same, I think it's that same energy that pulls together people when you think of them. So, for example, you might be, I'll give you a real example. So I was thinking about one of my students just recently from the How to Draw Comics Academy, and I've known him for years now, and yet I hadn't heard from him. It had been months and months, and I just thought of him like the other day, and then yesterday in class he pops up. Now I call that like proximity, when two things that have these commonalities end up emerging close together. And
that's a phenomenon.
That totally happened, man.
That's like when you're thinking about someone and then the phone rings and it's them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and
there's all these kinds of things that are it's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it happens all the time. And these are things, of course, that science can't really tell you about because it can't be measured, it can't be consolidated in any way. So I think art has that same vibe going on with it, where we can't explain why, but it's you know that came from, you can feel just looking at it that it came from another person who had their own ideas, their own history, their own inspirations.
Yeah, well, I mean, for
And
lack
this
of a
is the
better
sum of it.
for lack of a better word, all of us kind of have psychic ability.
I think so.
And what I mean by that is that you can be around someone for a while or not, maybe, and you can kind of read their mood just by being around them. You can feel their energy. You can finish their sentence. This happens a lot with my wife. I'm thinking about something and she says it. There's nothing that should prompt her saying it, and she'll say it. And I'm like, I was just thinking about that. And this happens a lot. We both do it to each other. And I think the more that you're around someone, it isn't just like you become familiar and this and that. I think like you start to kind of blend a bit. You vibe. And these are the words that are used. And, you know, I don't know the science behind this sort of stuff. But there is a connection. And there is an ability we have. There's that thing that tells you, and it's not just instinct, and maybe instinct is a little bit of a psychic tendency, you know, but you get a feeling.
For sure.
For no other reason, it should be illogical to have such feelings, to have these instincts, really, you know. But you get like you can read people, and some people are better at it than others, and it's a strange thing. And I think the more it's like X-Men, you know, the more that we kind of learn how to focus those abilities, I think the better we can get at it. And some people have gotten better at it than others. And I think that's what we're looking at when we see a lot of ancient civilizations where this is kind of stuff of, you know, they had to really trust this sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah. They believed in it for much longer than we believed in our science, too. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. Tens
of thousands of years in some cases. And they all felt it. They all clued into it. And yeah, man, it's interesting because I think that in the modern day, and this is my own speculation, we've been kind of led to believe that we're just this biological hardware that for some reason, and they can't tell you why, they don't know why, science, they call it the hard problem, right? They don't know why the hardware creates consciousness, why it creates life. They don't know where that spark comes from. But we've been led to believe that we're just this hardware, and we're born through some kind of biological evolutionary phenomena. We die, and then the next one comes along. And I think that significantly causes us to underestimate what we're capable of, what we are,
I
what
agree.
Our existence is all about. And I think that we should remember, because we all feel it. We know that instinct is there. That's how religions are made, because of this instinct. We feel that instinct, but I think we're forgetting about how important that instinct is and what it's telling us. And it's telling us we're much more than that. We're much more than just the hardware. Because if you think about the fact that most of the time we're not even experiencing this physical world, we're inside our head, we're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future, these mental projections, this imagination, you know, and meanwhile we're pulling ideas from our imagination into the world and putting it into our creations, expressing ourselves. Think about how much time we sleep and dream. Like most of our lives are actually
everything that we see around us was a thought at one point.
Well, yeah, and we live a majority of our lives in this realm that can't be measured, it can't be studied. I mean, they can't see it. Science can't analyze that. And so the physical stuff that we can test, that science can actually tell us what is and isn't, that's actually a small pinhole, really, of what we're perceiving. There's much more to it beyond that. I know this is way beyond the scope of your podcast, probably, Peter. You'll have to forgive me. I haven't been on one for a while.
Sorta. I mean, I got a whole playlist called Paranormal Pete, where I dive into paranormal topics, but also a lot of metaphysical stuff too. So this
Yeah, I
isn't
love
really
that.
that far off. I might have to categorize some of this into that.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, man, there's a lot of stuff to this. I think we discount ourselves too much. I think we're kind of brainwashed
Same.
into that. I think we're kind of told what our ceiling is as people, what our limits are.
Yeah.
And it's good to
Good way
know
of
what your
putting it.
limits are, so then you can work on overcoming them if that's what you wish to do. But
Mm.
there's so many people, like I said, every single thing you see around you was a thought turned into action. Someone
was, yeah.
someone had that thought, and then someone made
Significant.
and created that thing, or in some cases destroyed it. But it all started with a thought. And people, I don't know, we know that we're capable of great things, but for some reason we also let ourselves completely surrender that power to some people.
Yeah. We, for some reason, many of us don't have it quite right, and including, myself in that. It's hard to escape the conditioning, in a sense. And man, you know what? I could get deep into my philosophies. I could. But I do think that from the moment we're born, you have to realize that everything that comes after that, it's a little bit you, but it's a lot of everything else. We look to our parents to figure out how to be the very beginning of what it means to be a human being. And then we get into school, we're looking at our friends, like we're looking for that influence. And so we never really know what we would be without all of that. It's kind of like, this is a weird thought that I had recently. And man, I shouldn't be burdening you with such things, but I'll tell you anyway. So I was thinking about this. Now I'm not super religious, by the way, so just put that aside. But I was thinking
I'm
about
definitely more spiritual than religious. Yes.
Yeah, same. I was thinking about the Garden of Eden as a metaphor, right? It's like this paradise, and Adam and Eve, they're all innocent and whatnot. But then the snake comes along, says, "Hey, you should eat this apple of knowledge," and it was from that point onward, all of that innocence and all that paradise kind of ended, and they got pulled into, I guess a resemblance of what life at a base level really is for most of us, which is to survive, to work hard, to have children, have a family, and then it's all over at the end of that. It's kind of like they get pulled into this life of suffering. And I find it interesting that as children, we don't know anything about that. Like before the canvas has anything put onto it, we have these childhood, like naive ideas. We have an imagination that seemingly has no limits. And then slowly but surely, the walls of some other matrix gets put around us. And that is the reality we're living in. But we never know who we are outside of it. And sometimes I wonder if some of those stories in the old Bible aren't metaphors a little bit for the human condition. And I don't know what it all means, but that was just a little thought I had. And I guess as I've gotten older, and I'm not even that old, I shouldn't be having these thoughts yet, but as I get older, I start to think about this stuff and really what it all means, the greater meanings of life, you might say, and how that relates to my art.
I think it's good to have these thoughts, and to contemplate this kind of stuff from time to time, even if you do it passively, even if you only do it when a story, and all stories have some kind of metaphor, some kind of explanation for the human condition in some way, shape, or form, no matter how dramatic or goofy the story may be, it all kind of says something about something. But
for sure.
It's good to have these kinds of thoughts. I kind of feel bad for people who kind of don't have these thoughts, who just think that all of existence and all of life is just, you go to your job, you do your job, you come home, rinse, repeat over and over again.
And they're okay with that.
And hopefully you find joy in the work. Hopefully you have derived meaning from it, because you should, because it's important. All work is important, but it's one of those things where if you don't stop and think about the greater sense of the world around you, I really think that's how we lose sight of what it means to actually be here among each other.
For sure.
And we lose kind of
man.
that we take it for granted. And it all goes by so fast. Even like I'm only 40, I'm going to be 41 soon. And I'm just thinking about like, wow, 20 years goes by so fast. And if that 20
really
years
does.
goes by so fast, what's the next 20 going to be like? And the 20 after that, if I'm lucky enough. Hell, the next 20 seconds, if I'm lucky enough. So it's important to kind of not take that stuff for granted and assume that it just belongs to you already. You know, and that's why I like taking a step back, looking at the greater scope of stuff, and wondering like how do I fit in that puzzle? You know, because like there is a spot for me. There's a spot for all of us, and we're all capable of greatness, whatever that may be, and we all get to define that. And I think the moment we lose that we get to define what our greatness is, it's kind of when it all starts to unravel and you start to feel like the Walking Dead.
Yeah, you feel lost, not sure where to go next. You lose a sense of purpose. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know that you just know there's something more, especially when you disconnect for a bit and you get out there in nature. I mean, sometimes, heck, I'm just looking at a nice sunset and I think, wow, there is definitely much more beyond that matrix that I was talking about, that you're led to believe is the only thing that really
we also
exists.
need to be comfortable with that too. Like there's something about human beings that we're not comfortable with, some things that we just can't understand. But like if we can just be comfortable with some of it and be like just be in awe of these things and not feel that we have to tear everything apart and dissect it down to its quantum state to go, that's the reason why. You know, well, it doesn't matter sometimes, or a lot of the time, what the reason why is. Like, why did you have a thought about this? Why did you have a thought about that? Let's scientifically dissect you until we can find the molecule that gave you that thought. And once you've been obliterated from existence, we'll triumphantly declare that now we know why. Well, and what cost? It doesn't matter. Let's just
and it really doesn't matter when you realize that science really everything you discover in science. Here's the crazy thing: it's still a perception. So you can look at the molecule,
evolving perception.
You can look at something called that you've labeled as a molecule, and you can watch it and you can perceive it. But I mean, how do you know really what that is? How do you know what it is you're looking at?
And then eventually,
for real,
why is it there to begin with?
Yeah, you know, we think that everything's made up of matter and material and whatnot, but you don't know that because, heck, you could be having a dream, walking around the place, bumping into walls. I mean, what's that made of? What's that wall you just bumped into in your dream made of? Is it made of material?
Allegedly, 99% of it is space. When you go down the molecular atomic.
Yeah, that's what they say.
You know.
So, I mean, who knows? There's actually a philosophical way of thinking that I only recently discovered, but the thought had crossed my mind before, that your own perception is the only thing that can be sure to exist, which means you could be imagining everybody else. Like they could just be characters in a dream, and your consciousness is the only thing that you know exists. And there's no other way to figure out if anything else beyond it does. In other words, you could be freaking just playing through a headset right now. Not that I believe in necessarily a matrix or a virtual reality or anything like that, but is a very interesting idea to me that we, like right now, Peter, it could all be you. I could just be a character that's been sent to your perception to teach you some lesson, to help you find the ultimate meaning, the ultimate evolution that you're supposed to get to, right? And I find that to be very interesting, that idea, because oftentimes it does feel like you're being tested, especially when you're put through the ringer, or you're trying to find your way, you're trying to figure something out. And it really is, in the end, up to you to kind of execute on it, to find that ultimate destination. It's not no one else can really show that to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's how you deal with whoever and whatever comes your way. Some people wallow in it. Some people make an opportunity out of what appears to be to others as this catastrophically horrible event.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's the thing that's interesting, because there's so many people who do that. They take the lemon and they make the lemonade, and others, they take the lemon and complain about how sour it is.
Yeah, they just end up with more lemons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They square in their eyes and wonder, well, why? Why me? Why?
Yeah.
And it's easy
to realize
to do
you
that.
have more control than
we do it, right? But yeah, it's important to get back to that and be like, okay, after you're done having the pity party, you got to figure it out now.
Yeah. And sometimes a pity party, you want to stay there for a little while, you know? It feels nice to have a little bit of self-pity, but that can be a dangerous thing if you stay at that party for too long. Not a whole lot gets done.
Exactly. Oh boy. Okay, so we've been going for an hour. I've been going for 2. I gotta get you. I gotta go, but I gotta get you back on again, and we gotta start, I guess, sort of from the beginning. But I'd like to continue kind of where we are, while also diving into a couple other things I wanted to talk with you about. But I'll have to get you back
Peter,
on some time.
We'll get into all sorts of things in our next conversation, I'm sure. But yeah, I'd love to anytime. And apologies again for the late entrance. It's very rude of me. I don't mean to be rude.
No problem. No problem. I know you're a busy dude. I'm just glad you're okay. Whenever someone doesn't show up and I don't hear from them, I'm always like, I hope they're okay. Because I've had situations in life where, you know, you think someone's going to be somewhere and they're not, and it's because something really bad happened. So that's always where my head goes first and foremost, even though I do try to make light of it when someone, you know, doesn't show up or whatever. That's always where my head and my heart are. So I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad that that we'll be able to have this conversation in an extended form again in the near future. So thank you so much, man, for being able to at least come on here and join me for a bit. And I'm looking forward to the next.
It was nice.
Always.
Yeah, me too. Heck yeah.
And hopefully you guys enjoyed it too a bit. I saw there's a lot of conversation in the chat. Appreciate you guys. Clayton, before you go, anything you want to tell people, anything you want to direct them to?
Well, you know, I just want to say thanks to everyone for the amazing support that you always show the Barton Bros. I know I saw in the comments, we haven't been around a whole lot. Corey's always busily working on Androminoids and commissions and his projects, and I've been just in the How to Draw Comics Academy almost every day, if not in the How to Draw Comics Academy, editing videos and basically providing the best possible online education for comic artists all around the world to manage my time well enough to actually get out there on YouTube and do the shows that I know that I miss doing and you probably miss tuning into. So I'm going to really organize my schedule and make sure that I get that up and running again so I can connect with all of you once more, show you some cool stuff that you can do with a stylus or a pencil, and hopefully take whatever's swirling around in your imagination and manifest it onto the canvas. That's what I'm really here to do. That's my calling in life, I think. And Corey and I also have a few little projects that we're cooking up in the background as well that I think you're really going to dig, you're going to love. So we'll tell you more about that as it evolves. But yeah, just thanks in short to all of you. Really appreciate you, always, no matter how long we're away.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much again for being here today. And everybody, thank you guys in the chat for being here for the past 2 hours, 15 minutes. If you've been here the whole time, I really appreciate it. Whether you've been here or the whole time or not, please, if you do like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like this conversation or any of the other kind of conversations and videos I've had on this channel over the past, I don't know, 2-3 years, something like that, please consider subscribing. I'm always surprised at how many people actually watch and on the statistics and analytics, and yet like they're not subscribed. It's something like 46 to 48% of my views come from people who aren't subscribed. So make sure you're subscribed. Sometimes YouTube also kicks you off of the subscription, so make sure you are back on there. But everybody, thank you guys so much again. Clayton, thank you. I'm going to try to get you back on again sometime this month. And until then, everyone have a great night and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you guys soon. All the best.